Welcome to Forensic Friday,
where we examine the intersection of true crime, psychology, and the heart of being human in the middle of it all. So, you know Jon Stewart?
No.
Yeah. How do you not know Jon Stewart?
I don't know.
About this.
I don't know. I don't know who that is.
He is so good for my brain because he goes nuts about everything. Like he hates both political sides. He's just like us, where it's like everything is annoying. You know,
Okay.
thing is as it should be. How is this the best we have?
I mean, I feel the same way.
Yeah. So Jon Stewart had Lori Gottlieb, like my favorite therapist, besides you,
Yes.
my favorite therapist. And my own therapist, who is a legend. But I was watching Jon Stewart with Garrett because it was helpful after the debate to just sort of watch something sane about
Okay.
somebody else's reaction to it because it was just hard to watch. It was
Yeah.
just very geriatric and just very hard to watch on
Yes.
all sides.
Yeah.
So we're watching together and Lori Gottlieb comes out and I'm like fangirling immediately. This is my chick,
Mhm.
right? What is her book? You should talk to someone. So good. If you guys want to read it, you should listen to it because her voice is so good too.
Mm.
But she said a couple of very funny things. So they started talking about therapy, and I have to drop this.
Okay.
Before diagnosing someone with depression, make sure they aren't surrounded by assholes.
Valid.
So good. That is
That's
so
so
good.
valid.
And then she followed it up by saying, "Look at who sent you here, because often the people who come to therapy are the people who come to therapy because the people who should be in therapy aren't coming to therapy."
That's so
Isn't
true.
that so true? And I know
Oh my
so
gosh.
often you and I talk about like, oh, I wish their brother would come. I wish their
Yeah.
whoever would just like get
Mhm.
in a
Mhm.
room and get some help because we can only do so much with
Mhm.
the person who's taking the responsibility to come.
Yes.
So I
Yes.
thought that was kind of funny and also very true.
So true. Yeah, so many people I work with, even myself, I'm like, the time I spend talking about certain people in my life in my therapy,
Mhm.
I'm like, they should be sitting here with me,
100%.
you know?
Absolutely. And I thought that sort of connected with our Armie Hammer family because you want to talk about being surrounded by assholes.
Oh my gosh, Jeannine,
Generational trauma.
and just abuse and everything.
Yes. And I did watch the documentary after we recorded.
Yeah.
So now I have a little more background, which is kind of nice.
Yes, it is helpful.
And also, I know why the audio was weird on the last one
Why?
because my microphone was backwards. I told Garrett was like, "Why were you so echoey?" And I'm like, "I don't know. Like, I don't do the technology. That's not my job." He comes in and he sets everything up and he goes, "Your mic was backwards." I'm like, "How? I don't even know how I had it backwards."
Like the speaker was facing the other way.
I know.
I'm going to show you mine and make sure mine's correct. Is this correct?
Perfect. You're right.
Okay.
Mine was the opposite way.
Oh,
Oh, and so apparently
that's
that affects sound quality. So sorry, guys, we're learning.
okay. Well, here we are. That's okay. So I'm going to just share really quickly. I had such a full weekend, but I went and saw one of my favorite artists, Morgan Wallen, which we've mentioned him in the past when he threw the chair off the rooftop bar.
Yep.
I just like, he was his like ex got engaged or married or something.
Oh, so he's just in his feelings.
Yeah. He was,
Morgan Wallen, get a therapist and stop throwing shit.
I'll be your therapist if you're in Colorado. I'll just be honest, like I still love him and I don't care that he threw
I
a
get
chair.
it. Some people build a brand by wearing a certain kind of sweatshirt, and some people throw chairs off of things.
Fine.
Do
Like,
you?
so I'm going to do a quick recap for you and for our listeners because the Hammer family tree is confusing and everyone's name is almost the same except for one person. So
Yes.
we're going to go through that. So our last episode, we made it through the great-great-grandfather, the
Mm-hmm.
great-grandfather, and the grandfather. So those three people, the great-great-grandfather is Julius Hammer. Armand was Julius's son,
Yep.
Armie Hammer's great-grandfather.
Yes.
Okay?
And then Armand is the one who got super rich.
Yes. Who started this legacy.
Got it.
Then Julian Hammer is Armie's grandfather, Armand's son.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, he's real bad.
He's pretty bad. His son is Michael, which we haven't really talked about Michael, but he's the father of Michael and Casey. And Casey is the one who wrote the book.
Right.
For family. So like, just like the family that you would pray that you'd never be born into.
Oh, that you have no choice in. Like when I think about Casey, there just was no one there for her. Like there was no one to save her, no one to make her safe.
Yes. Well, and what's interesting is Armand actually really cared more. I won't say like really cared for them,
No.
but cared more for Michael and Casey than Julian did.
Yes. And it sounds like that was kind of a bone of contention between Julian and his father, Armand, too, because
Armand left his son enough to pay off his house, I guess.
well, I think he left Casey 250, right? 250,000.
And then left the rest of it to Michael.
Wow.
Yeah. Michael and his wife.
I thought it was interesting that he left that money like to both of them. Like it says pretty clearly they were both executors, which is just interesting.
So yes, interesting. So we're going to dive into Michael and Armie today.
Oh, I'm ready. I'm so ready.
Perfect. As we said, right, Armand, great-grandfather to Armie, left Michael a lot of money, yada, yada, yada. Michael and Armand were close.
And Michael got what, like 40 million or something, less than they thought they would all get, but he got a lot more than anybody else.
Way more, right? So Michael, again, continues the family trauma. That's just how it went. He was interesting. So in my opinion, you can tell me what you think because you watched the documentary. In my opinion, I didn't get a ton of detail on the type of abuse that Michael would engage in. He was his own, like he engaged a lot more in his dad's stuff as a teenager, like / young adult, and was just getting into trouble a lot, like drinking and drugs and all that. And then met his wife and they loved her. The family actually really liked her because she came from a very wealthy Christian family who their image of her was that she was going to be really good for Michael and like kind of help straighten him up.
And I get the sense too that Michael was just more savvy. Like Julian's a mess. Armand was really savvy, smart, big business guy. And Michael really picked that up where Julian didn't. Like Michael wanted to inherit this business and this role in the community. And that was all really important to him, even though it was still all super dysfunctional. And I get the sense that his abuse was a little bit less overt. It was a little more covert and manipulative. Yeah.
So he flew a little bit more under the radar, but honestly, in my opinion, I could be wrong. In my opinion, he kind of rode the wave of the wealth of the family.
Yes.
And didn't really contribute anything.
No, I don't think he did much, but I think he knew how to kind of play the game.
Yes. Well, obviously his grandfather loved him.
Well, and nobody built on the fortune. That's interesting too, when you think about some celebrities take some and make more. So say what you will about the Kardashians, but they took a couple $1 million that they had and turned it into a freaking empire. And you and I may not love all the pieces of that, but there's a lot of industry in that. Like they have put in work to get to that place. I don't get the sense with this family that they were trying to build the fortune. Like you said, they were just riding the wave.
Yes, they were riding Armand's wave.
Yep.
And I think Armand didn't love that, except he loved Michael. So he was more okay with Michael.
Yep.
Which is just interesting to me. So we are going to dive into Michael Hammer and Armie Hammer today.
Yes.
Brace yourself.
Oh my goodness.
There's a lot on both of them. So Michael Hammer, we've already established the family tree. Okay.
Yeah.
So Michael is Julian's son, Armin's grandson.
Yes.
And they're all important, but Michael's important because Julian and him did not have a good relationship. However, Armand and him had a great relationship because Michael is who Armand left basically most of his fortune to. Okay, we're going to come back to that.
Yes.
Okay, so again, Michael and Casey are brother sister. Casey is the one who wrote the book, like just airing all the Hammer trauma, abuse, everything.
Yes. And from what I know, she is just ready to tell her story. Like she's just not, she says she won't be silenced. So
yes. And she is aware or was aware at the time that this could potentially like ruin her. And honestly, she was a little fearful of her life at that time. When she was writing this. This was when Michael was alive. He's now passed away.
Yeah.
He passed away, I believe, 2 years ago. So all right, Michael Hammer, y'all. Here we go. So Michael is the one, like I said before, who Armand left his business empire to. He chose his grandson over his son. Like that's how deep this family drama goes.
And Michael, it sounds like, really wanted that position. He didn't do much for it, but he just was always, I get the sense, standing there waiting for it.
Yes. Well, he always felt competitive, I think, to his dad.
Yes.
So he got the most of the family money.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, which is just wild to me. So Michael, I'm not going to get into like a ton of Michael's childhood because we kind of already did that talking about Julian. However, things that I'll like recap, he was very abused by Julian. They were super competitive with each other. Julian tried to buy his girlfriend at one point for $1 million and she went with him and then realized he wasn't going to pay her. And so she bounced.
Tons of violence. I just, when we ask clients, like, have you seen violence in your home growing up? This is the extreme. He saw so much violence.
And experienced a lot of violence and was also a very, very violent human himself.
Yes.
But I will say, based on what I have read and watched and all the things, he was, in my opinion, he was a little more covert. He was more under the radar with his abuse. I couldn't find a ton about, like, when I was looking up his ex-wife.
Yeah.
There wasn't a lot of information on how their marriage was.
No, and Julian was just messy. Like Armin didn't like things messy. They say over and over again, Armin kept it together.
Yeah.
He would threaten anybody who was a risk to his image. And so I think the way that Julian rebelled was messy. And I think Michael learned watching that. Like, that didn't go well for him. So I'm going to do something different.
Well, and he followed more in his grandfather's footsteps, which is probably why they had more of a connection.
And why he got all the money.
And here's the thing. I mean, shoot, Julian had the cops called on them all the time when he would throw parties. And so I'm sure Armand was just like, you're a dumpster fire, like move on.
Yeah, and it's almost fair in some ways that he didn't want to give Julian $40 million. I just think that in doing that, he created a cluster for Casey, who got forgotten altogether, really. Wow. And then also for Julian, who was extremely unhappy, and it didn't do anything to improve family relations. That's for sure.
Right. And I mean, I said this last time, women just weren't a priority in this family. They were not a priority. They were not cared for.
They were like trading cards. Literally, I will trade you this one for that one, apparently.
Literally. Well, and for Casey to get next to nothing, I mean, she got $250,000 from her grandpa. It's like, it just shows how little value women had to them.
Absolutely.
Like they just did not care about the women in their family, even if it was children, not just like their wives that they like tossed around.
Well, and this is misogyny and patriarchy. This is at its worst,
Yes.
obviously. At
Yes.
its worst, this is what it looks like.
Yes.
Women exist to serve the men. Men exist to control the women and have the women do whatever they want them to do. Like that is how it's
Yep.
been since the beginning of time in many ways. And
Yep.
so very evident in this family, that's for sure.
Yes. So Michael got most of the money along with his wife, Drew. So I'm going to talk about them for a second.
Okay.
So Michael met Drew, his ex-wife, when
Okay.
he was 28. Okay. I don't know how old Drew was. She was, I think, around the same age, a little younger.
Yeah.
She came from a very wealthy Christian family.
Hmm.
So for whatever reason, Armand, grandfather to Michael, right,
Mm-hmm.
loved her for Michael, like
Mm-hmm.
thought she was going to bring, and she kind of did actually, a more positive view of their family. And my,
And some stability, maybe.
yes, like, yes, I mean, support, faith,
Mm.
good, maybe good morals to some degree. Like at times when I was watching that documentary and reading different things, I thought maybe there was a small part of Armand who was like, I don't want this to be our life. I mean, he kind of got out of some of the craziness, but then got right back in it.
Yes.
So I do think maybe there was a small part of Armand that was like, this is insane. And maybe at some point this will like level out and we can still stay wealthy, but maybe be more wholesome. That never
Well, and
happened.
he made Michael and Drew executors of the will, I believe, which
Yes.
that is actually different than I would expect in a patriarchal, misogynistic system.
Yes.
He must have valued her to put her in
I
that
think
kind
he,
of a position.
I think he actually cared about her.
Yeah. Yeah.
So Michael meets Drew, they get married, and they have two sons, Armie and Victor, which we just found out. And he spells
Yeah.
it Viktor.
Mm-hmm.
He was named after his great uncle Victor. Y'all, there was like next to nothing on little brother Victor, and I'm not going to go down the rabbit hole of
I just
him.
can't.
Here's my maybe heart piece jumping in a little early. Maybe Victor was like, y'all are batshit, and I'm going to stand over here. Let's just like hope.
Yeah, I mean, maybe he really did just want to stay out of the limelight because clearly it didn't do his family any good.
Yeah. So I'm going to go with God on that one and just say Victor's maybe the saving grace. Who knows?
Who knows?
Who knows? Watch, we're gonna get people who comment and be like, Victor was terrible. I don't know.
Victor's a serial killer. He's in prison.
Yeah, he's in prison, you
You
guys.
don't
Do your
know.
homework. Anyway, okay. So they have two sons, Armie and Victor. And it's interesting because during his marriage, at the beginning part of his marriage, Michael gets baptized to be a Christian.
I heard that in the documentary. Like,
So, yeah, he got baptized pretty well into his marriage. So, there's a few dicey things on Michael, but really quickly, just to recap, he was 28 when he met Drew. She was sweet, innocent. They all loved her. Drew actually had a really good heart.
yeah.
So, she really wanted this Christian life for her family.
Hmm.
So I'm going to share a little bit about her really quickly. She helped run two of the foundations. She was like the secretary, blah, blah, blah. They got divorced in 2012. And after they got divorced, they went and like lived their lives, Drew and Michael. Okay. Drew actually went to school and started her own organization to help women and children who've gone through difficult times through divorce and abuse.
Well, that's telling.
Right?
That's pretty telling. Like, we get divorced and then I go set up a foundation.
Yes.
Hmm.
Yeah. And like actually really wanted to help people. But I was like, that probably says something about Michael. Here's the thing. Here's the
Yeah.
thing, Jenny. There isn't a lot on
Hmm.
Michael and his any type of abuse he showed. She
Yeah.
kept that pretty under wrap. So did
Yeah.
other women.
Well, I think Michael learned, and it could have gone two ways, right?
Mhm.
Michael either learned you got to keep your stuff on lockdown. And
Yeah.
so he actually exerted more control,
Mhm.
or it is actually possible that he wasn't quite as abusive.
Again, I think it was more covert.
I think it may have been more covert, and it is interesting that she jumped into that after getting divorced and that they got divorced after all those years.
Yes, I mean almost 30 years. They were married for 27 years. She also is on the national board for Child Help, which is a nonprofit charity aiding victims of child abuse.
See, and part of me wonders, and there was nothing in the documentary about this, but wonders about Casey's relationship with Drew, because I'm sure it was awful with the inheritance stuff and everything else. Like that was really bad. And I doubt
Mhm.
they were close then, but doesn't it beg the question, like, did they ever have a coffee date and compare notes? You just have to wonder.
Right. 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 Well, and the thing that she started specializing with women and children dealing with divorce and abuse was actually a ministry she started called the Hammer Heart Foundation.
Oh, interesting. Interesting that she kept the name.
Yeah. I wonder if she did that because of her boys. I think
Oh,
a
that could
lot of
be.
moms do that where they keep their
Yeah,
ex's name just so they can still match their children's name.
it does. That makes sense.
So that's a little bit about Drew. So one of the things that is said about Michael that's like really the only big quote unquote big deal when it comes
Yeah.
to like any type of abuse or BDSM thing was this thing. So it's I don't know, I get it. I don't know if we can get in trouble for saying this because his lawyers came back and they were like, it's not really a thing, blah, blah, blah. Anyway, so he
Allegedly. Allegedly.
allegedly he had his own sexual issues. I know, issues. So he had this thing called a sex throne.
Okay. I just hard
You-
swallowed. They
They
probably
said
heard me swallow because I was either going to laugh or cry. I don't know.
I
A,
couldn't hear it.
a sex throne?
So they say this in the documentary, but they say nothing about it. Okay, so
I
I
think I
actually
had an
looked
out of
it up.
body experience. I must have just dissociated for a minute.
So
A
I
sex
looked, I didn't
throne?
look up the sex throne, but there was more information of what this was.
Oh, please tell me.
Okay. And just so you know, allegedly, right?
Oh, allegedly.
It was a gag gift from friends. Like, that's a load of shit. Anyway,
Yeah, okay. Allegedly.
it was a gag gift. It
Don't
wasn't
come for us.
his.
Don't
He
come
didn't,
for us, Hammers.
he
We have
didn't
lots of
purchase
allegations.
this,
That's right.
according to him. It was a gag gift from his friends. I would find new friends if my friends sent me this. Anyway,
Oh my gosh.
this throne was also known as the naughty chair. And it literally says here the chair is
Uh-huh.
allegedly,
Hmm.
alleged to be 7 feet high with a hole in the seat
Ew.
and a cage underneath it.
Oh. Oh no.
Like, here's the
Absolutely
thing
not.
Michael has passed away. If he was still alive, I would say find new friends if your friends actually got this for you.
There's
But I don't
there's
think they did.
there's no place that you order a sex throne to those specifications and give them to a friend. That's not a thing. It's
No.
not a thing. He designed it allegedly. Allegedly. And in my just reasonable common sense self, he wanted this stupid thing. A sec
Yes.
with somebody in a cage.
I'm sitting here trying, I'm like picturing a chair.
I have really bad my mentals are bad right now. Like
I mean, I don't want to know. Maybe I just
we
created
don't
a
want to
picture
know.
that
We don't want
no
to
one
know.
needed.
We don't want to know.
I just created a picture that no one needed. So here we are.
It feels degrading at a minimum.
Adam.
And listen, when the woman was talking about it and talking about the safety, consent, like all of those really important pieces, that is not what this is.
Yep.
Allegedly. I'm just saying, there's literally, I just do not believe with this history and this family and this intergenerational violence. Like, these are not consent people. Armie
Right.
Hammer is not known for getting consent. That's not something that he's known for.
No. Yeah. All of these individuals are known more for you will comply, don't say no.
Exactly.
Like, that's basically their standard. So Michael passed away. He passed away in 2022. He got remarried before that. The only spicy thing about Victor, their other son, is that he stopped his stepmom, so the new wife, Misty,
Mm-hmm.
stopped her from getting any of Michael's money. So she's pissed about it.
Yep.
So that's like the only thing that I know about him before he died. So Armie, y'all, we finally made it to Armie.
Woohoo!
Took a minute. So Armie is was an actor. There's like speculation that he is selling timeshares.
Now?
Yeah,
Oh, how the mighty have fallen.
I know. So Armie is an interesting human. Okay. He was married to Elizabeth Chambers, and they have 2 sons.
Mm-hmm. And they were married for a while, too.
Yes. They were married from 2010 to 2023.
Okay, 13 years. That's a good stint.
Yeah. However, there were like speculations that they had like had some separations and
Mm-hmm.
were on and off during their marriage.
Yeah.
They got divorced. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
They got divorced after he had been talking to many, many, many women.
Many women.
Many women.
Not allegedly. Like we have receipts.
Yes, receipts. We have messages. Y'all,
Yeah.
go watch the documentary. I am actually going to name some of these women because they are named in the documentary.
Yeah.
So it's not like these women are trying to keep their name out of this.
No.
Which good for them. Like
Good
say
for them.
your words, like use your voice. When this documentary came out, Miss Chambers' ex-wife
Mm-hmm.
said it was obviously heartbreaking on so many levels and very painful. And then she said, but at the same time, it exists.
Mm.
I even looked stuff up to see if there was more on Elizabeth Chambers. There wasn't really anything relating to Armie being abusive to her.
Yeah.
And actually, at one point, he says, I would never do BDSM with my wife because I respect her too much.
Oh, wow. So do you think, Nat, that he was just doing it on the side with these other women? Because he clearly has
Yes.
an affinity for this, and I would argue even practices certain skills
Yes.
and is utilizing them with women right away. So my hunch would be if he didn't do this with his wife, he was doing this with people on the side pretty consistently.
Yes, he was. A lot of this stuff started to come out in 2020.
Yep.
Okay, so kind of when COVID happened. And I actually told you about this a little bit ago. I could not find it, but I listened to a podcast while I was walking Sloan's Lake one day.
Yeah.
And it was during 2020 because I remember I was listening to it while walking because that was the only thing we could do in 2020 was like be outside kind of with a mask on.
Yeah.
And I remember I was listening to this podcast and they mention Armie and just what was going on, but they didn't go into any detail. They just talked about basically the BDSM world and how people have like this kinky stuff. And I think it was a marriage therapy podcast.
Oh, okay.
And they were talking more about like, people's sex lives and all that stuff from a marriage therapist standpoint and how to help people with that. But they talked about like the BDSM world and they said something along the lines of like, obviously it has to be consensual. They have to agree. There has to be so much safety and trust within it.
Yeah.
And how Armie's was just so sideways and there wasn't any of that. Interesting.
Oh, and the BDSM expert that they had, she's actually a professor somewhere. I forget.
Yeah. Oh, in the video? Yeah.
Yeah, in the video.
Yep.
What she talked about is how in quote unquote healthy BDSM, which we'll debate another day, there is a sense that what is happening is actually supposed to be good for the submissive.
Yeah.
Over being good for the dominant. And that is so not the deal with Armie Hammer.
No, not at all.
Mm-mm.
Things got super spicy in 2020 for him. Okay. Mind you, he got divorced in 2023.
Yep.
Okay. He started talking. So I'm going to go through this in a very similar fashion to the order in the documentary. Okay. Because that's how my brain could keep it all together.
Yes.
So the first girl and the main one who does most of the talking is Courtney Vakovich.
Yeah.
I think I'm saying her name correctly.
Yes.
So she was the first girl, and like I said, the main girl that they really interviewed in this documentary. You guys go watch it. This is like a brief overview of the information they go into.
It's fascinating. And this is a boss lady from Dallas.
Oh, I love her.
She's a boss.
Yes. So she starts dating Armie when she was 30, but before they start dating, they start talking well before he's divorced.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And she knows that. She's like, hey, I see that you have this wife. And he's like, no, 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 we're separated, blah, blah, blah. So
Mm-hmm.
he like straight up is already lying.
Oh, absolutely.
She gets roped into the situation with Armie. Okay. So
Mm.
they're like messaging back and forth, and their relationship for the first good part of it was really over text messaging.
Yeah.
And it started over DMs, Instagram
Yeah.
DM, which that's how he contacted most of these women.
And he initiated. This isn't like women who were
Yes.
stalking his DMs and then he would just pick them like shooting fish in a barrel. He didn't
Correct.
like that. So he would pick them out and DM them.
Correct. She had just gotten out of a really quote unquote toxic relationship when they started talking. He would love bomb her and talk about his quote unquote toxic relationship with his wife
And his trauma.
and his trauma and all the things.
Yeah.
And she was like, oh my gosh, he's so open. He's so vulnerable. Like, this is so great. And that's the hard thing, Jeannine, is when that's happening and you're not well versed on what love bombing is, what
Yes.
trauma bonding is. I mean, you can get sucked in really quickly
Absolutely.
with this type of behavior. So she asked about his wife. He said that they were separated. And then they kept their relationship going via phone. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
There was at one point, and I'm pointing out some of the bigger things that stuck out that were like, girl, run for the hills.
Red flags.
Red flags. So one of the times where she was out of town, she went out of town with some friends, and he went to her apartment
Yep.
and was like texting her pictures of her place.
Which is stalking.
It is stalking. Said something like, he literally said, I am trying to find your scent.
It's already bad.
I'm trying to find your scent, like whatever.
Mm.
And then left her a note. And she was like, she saw this note before she opened it. She was like, oh, that's really sweet. Like, because he would say super sweet things to her.
Right.
Historically, it said, I'm going to bite the fuck out of you.
So romantic. Dreamy.
Like, no, thank you.
Run. Run.
Run.
I do think that spooked her a little bit because she said she wasn't crazy about that.
Yes, but she justified it.
Yeah, she did.
So she justified it in the sense where she literally thought to herself, like, well, maybe it's because he's so passionate and like he just wants to be together.
Or like when you think something's yummy, like in a cute way. But like, I think you're right. I think she thought of it as like passion and he just was so into her.
Yes. So, well, that's what she like chalked it off to.
Mm-hmm.
Right. I think she was, like you said, like at first, I think she was like, that's weird. But instead of listening to her spidey senses, she was like, that's just him being passionate and wanting to be with me and whatever. Like all that angst built up. Okay. I literally wrote in my notes, red flags.
Just so many red flags.
Yes. So then him and his wife split and they actually met in person. Okay. She goes on this like long vacation with him.
Weird road trip to like the middle of nowhere.
The desert, and stayed in a motel.
Very weird.
Like, you have so much money. Why are we going to a motel in the desert?
So isolated.
So isolated. And it's like, it showed it in the documentary. It was one of those motels that literally just said motel on a big sign.
It looked almost like a ghost town because his friend was renovating the motel.
Oh, that's right. That's right. That's right.
And this isn't your Schitt's Creek town where they're renovating and, it's all very cute and the town people are funny or whatever. There are like no people. Like it's kind of just them.
Yeah. They were there for 3 weeks.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know anyone who can just leave their life for 3 weeks.
Mm-mm. No, although this did happen a bit more in COVID because people could work remote and do whatever.
That's true. That's
So
true. And
people
she
would
like
just
owns
kind
an
of
app.
dip. Yeah.
Yeah, that's true. So she even said there were things that didn't seem right. At one point he went to the store to get ropes. She expressed like some discomfort with that and he read that and then backed off a little.
Mm-hmm.
So what's interesting about that in my brain is two things. One of two things could have been going on in his brain. And I'll tell you which one I think it was,
Yep.
actually. So benefit of the doubt would say he was like, you know what? I care about her. This makes her uncomfortable. I don't want to do it.
Yeah.
The other side says, she's gonna run for the hills if I do this right now.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna wait.
Well, and there's a third option, and the third option is intentional grooming, which I think he did all the time.
Yes.
Is I'm going to expose you a little bit and let you wrap your head around that,
Yeah. Well, exactly.
but then I'm going to back way off and act respectful.
Exactly. So it's a little bit of 2 and 3. All
Yep.
of be a little bit of 2,
Yep.
right? So grooming, pushing the boundary, but not wanting to push it too far. So you
Yep.
don't go running, so you don't spook, right?
Yep.
Just so gross. That happened. They didn't end up getting the ropes that night. But then in that same trip, he made her watch that weird. I didn't even look this up, Jeannine. I don't even think I could watch it.
Hmm.
But that movie called The Secretary.
Yes. I have no desire to see it, but I was familiar with it because a client told me about it one time.
Interesting.
Mm-hmm. Well, because here's the thing, Nat and I have an interesting job.
Yep.
And we hear all kinds of sex things. So we're not a couple of prudes over here. We hear all the things.
Mhm.
And we are probably more familiar than we would like to be with the BDSM stuff, just because it comes up, as you can imagine, in some domestic violence situations because of power and control. So we hear this stuff from time to time, but I did have a client share that movie with me at one point when she was considering entering a BDSM relationship. So this is like something in that lifestyle, or people who are
Yep.
considering that lifestyle will tend to sort of check that out.
Like, hey, go watch this and see.
Mhm.
Which in my
I know.
I could never.
No.
So that all happened, but then she did say, so he didn't get the ropes, but she did say that something happened to her during
Yeah.
that trip
Yes.
that she wouldn't even talk about. I mean, I have my guess.
Yeah.
But she did say, she said it's something that you would talk about before you do it. And they had zero conversation. So just like what you said, he pushed her boundary
Yeah.
almost probably too far.
Yes. And he was
But
degrading and he was angry. Those were two things that she pointed out. Like it
not
was,
that time.
oh, is that a different time?
That was a different time. So
But she said it was degrading.
it was degrading, but he wasn't angry at that time. He was angry at the later time
Mm,
that we'll talk about.
yeah.
No, this was just that he had pushed her boundary. He did something that she said normally you would talk about. It was uncomfortable. And she cried in the documentary talking a little bit about this, but she was like, it's just not something that she really wanted to talk about. But she said it was very degrading and belittling.
And you have to understand about this woman, this is a powerhouse,
Hmm.
smart, strong, independent woman who had a lot going for her. And what she talked about was how over the course of that trip that culminated in this sexual
Hmm.
experience that she didn't want,
Yeah.
just pieces of her
Yes.
were falling away and she was not feeling as confident as normal, but she was still trying to put up boundaries. Like, I really admire that she really
Yes.
was trying to put boundaries up with him the whole time, I think.
Yeah, she was. So after that happened, she did go home. I think at that point she was like, okay, I need to get back to my life. Like this
Yeah.
is like we've been living in this fairy tale. It just got a little bit dark. I got to go back. I got to reset myself.
Yeah.
But it was traumatizing for her. However, it wasn't like he wasn't mad. She didn't really, I don't think she really expressed anything to him.
She just disconnected a fair bit.
She just disconnected. She did say that she went home and she cried in the shower and had a wave of anxiety, which, you guys, here's the thing. We are making shirts that say, here's the thing.
Here's the thing.
If your body is responding in a way that you don't recognize because of an experience, that means that there's trauma there. That means that there's something happening or something happened that is not okay.
Yeah.
Okay, your body is literally telling you that. And so what really sucks about this situation for Courtney is that she was this boss lady. However, my friends, she was not listening to her body. And the crappy thing is she probably didn't have people in her life to say, and because she said it was degrading and humiliating, she's not sharing what happened.
I don't think she wanted to talk about it.
No, but what sucks is then she ignored her body because she didn't probably really know what was going on. No one was speaking into it because she felt like she had to keep it secret.
Yes.
Right? And so it's sad. It's sad because it gets worse. They stay together. She said when they were together, she felt really good, but when they were apart, it didn't feel right. And they were not exclusive, but she could not date. So there's a pattern. Do you remember when Armand had his wife, the last wife he had that got him rich, and he had that mistress who had two names, and he said to her, you cannot date other people.
Right.
She was like devoted to him as his mistress. So it's interesting because Armie is going down this same path. He's not technically still with his wife at this point. However, they were not exclusive, but she could not date. Then there was rumors that he was dating someone else. Right? There were paparazzi pictures of him with this other girl and how he was holding her. She was like, I knew that they like basically were intimate.
Rumor Willis. It was Rumor Willis. That's why there were so many pictures. And his hand was on her hip just in a very possessive way. That's more than like friendly.
Yes. And Courtney said she felt very betrayed and tried to end their relationship. Or as I call them, situationships.
Oh, they're a situationship for sure.
Yes. So she went to where he lived and ended it. Then she went on a walk with a friend after ending her situationship with Armie, after Courtney ended her situationship with Armie. And he found her.
Yes, again with the stalking.
So he, at some point, shared her location with him. I don't think she did it.
I don't either. I think he did it in her phone.
I think he did it in her phone. She doesn't say this explicitly, so maybe she shared it at some point. But
he could have had spyware on her phone. Like, this is not his first rodeo.
Allegedly, not his first rodeo. So he shows up where she is, and she's like, again, you guys, this is the red flag. This is the red flag. And she's like, that felt kind of romantic.
Healthy men don't do that. Healthy men would be like, I'm going to go play basketball and shoot hoops for a while because I'm upset about my breakup. Like, not, I'm going to track your location and show up. That is not romance. That is not love.
No, that's stalking and possessive and obsessive, jealous. Jealousy. So she fell right back into it, right? Like, just thought that was romantic. They got right back into it. Over time, she would find herself with bruises, hand marks, bite marks all over her body. And he told her, wear them like a badge of honor. How sick is that?
Oh, yeah, we're going to have to do an episode on BDSM because I have so many thoughts about this and women today and what's happening with all of it. But he's basically saying wear these marks like a badge of honor. It's possession. It's ownership.
It's ownership, right? Like it's like the same damn thing with hickeys.
Oh, yeah.
Like,
Absolutely.
hickeys are like the PG version of what, Army was doing to people.
Yes.
But also, it's like, I mean, we've seen people show up to group with hickeys on their neck, and I'm like, what are you doing?
It does tend to lead to a conversation.
Yes, what are you doing?
Especially if you're, over 17. It's like, hey guys.
Like, that's not cute. Anyway,
Mm-mm.
ugh, it makes my stomach hurt. Okay. So he again would push the boundaries a little bit at a time.
Yeah.
So one of their trips, this is when things got sideways.
Mm.
More sideways. They were already sideways, but
Yeah.
like upside down. This is when
Yeah.
things.
Yeah.
So one of their trips, she said she saw a brown bag with ropes in it. And here's the thing. She didn't say how she felt. I think she maybe said a little bit like, and she was nervous or whatever. If I were in her shoes, my stomach would have dropped out of my butt.
Oh, yeah. Are you kidding
You know
me?
what I mean? If I see ropes,
Well, our brain goes to murder because of Dateline, but you know, I saw a clip. Maybe we'll put it on social media. There was a clip of him on a nighttime talk show, not Fallon, but something like that, but way earlier, years ago, years
okay.
and years ago. And there's rope there for some reason, and he pulls it out and
Oh,
ties it. Do you know what I'm talking about?
yes.
I mean, he wasn't shy, I don't think, about the fact that he liked this lifestyle. Like, I do think people knew this about him. Like, it was
Yes.
not a well-kept secret that he liked
Oh,
this kind of stuff,
no.
you know?
Well, except when people would ask him, "Do you like BDSM?" He would literally change the subject. So I don't
Right.
know. Not the brightest crayon in the box, in my opinion.
Not a denial.
No.
Mm-hmm.
So he showed up with ropes. This is what you were alluding to earlier. Okay.
Yes.
So they go to dinner. He has too much to drink and he's angry.
Yes.
She literally says that night he was drunk. I was not. And I did not say no. I said I didn't feel good. I said everything except no,
Mm,
which again
mm.
goes to this idea of compliance isn't consent.
Oh, absolutely.
What option did she have with an angry, drunk 6'4", I think he is,
Oh, he's huge. He's like 6'4", 6'5". Yeah.
man?
Yes.
Like,
Yeah.
and she's tiny.
I know.
What options? She had no options. Like she said, she did everything she could without saying no, because if she said no, it could have been worse for her.
Hmm. Yeah.
Could have been worse for her.
Yeah.
And it was already bad.
Mm.
But before everything happened, she said she wasn't feeling good. He was agitated and wouldn't talk to her. Like gave her the silent treatment.
Oh, can you imagine going through that with someone
No.
being pushed past your boundaries, doing it anyway, and then being ignored? Which, by the way, in BDSM subculture, this was the other thing the expert said. There's
Mm-hmm.
always caretaking and bonding and that kind of stuff after something like this, and he did none of that. He was just basically, bye.
He like fell asleep.
Yeah, he just went and fell asleep, and
This
she's
is when I say
traumatized.
F right off to people.
Absolutely, 100%.
I try not to say that anymore. Well, that's not true. So he's agitated. He tells her he's only tied up mannequins and he wanted to try it with her. And that's when he acted mad. And then again, he pushed the boundary. He was drunk. He put on super creepy music. That's literally what I wrote. Super creepy. She didn't say super creepy. She said it was some weird,
Mm,
um, I want to say mixtape, but like
yeah.
had some mix of songs on a CD that he played. And it, from basically what I gathered, it just was creepy.
Mm-hmm.
And tied ropes around her neck, wrists, and ankles, and it was all behind her back.
Mm.
So she couldn't, I mean,
Can't
immobilized.
move. Oh my gosh, that's so scary.
Immobilized. And just did whatever he wanted to her.
Mm.
I mean, I'm thankful she didn't go into detail because I have a very visual brain, which is why I couldn't watch Game of Thrones. It was just too much for me.
I get it. I get it.
I just don't like that stuff. So I'm glad she didn't go into detail because I probably couldn't get it out of my brain. But I mean, you don't have to use too much of your imagination to think of what he did,
Mm.
right? So she was completely immobilized. And then, like we just said, he just went to sleep after like it was nothing. He was in total control, destroying any sense of, she says this, destroying any sense of bodily autonomy.
Mm.
Any sense.
Mm.
Yeah.
That's awful.
She met his mom a few days later, but then broke up with him 2 days after she met his mom.
Yeah, and that dinner was insane, I feel like, too.
Yeah, so she didn't go into too much detail, except that Armie was like going off about his dad. So this is
Yeah.
what I was alluding to earlier. Armie was going off about his dad, and Drew like wigged out. Not, I shouldn't say wigged out, but like got frustrated and basically said something along the lines of, "You don't know what your dad went through."
Mm.
Like sticking up for him. Like, you don't know what your dad went through. You don't know what he experienced.
Interesting.
Right.
Ooh, you know what's interesting about that? That dinner would have happened after the divorce.
Yeah.
2020 was after their divorce, so it's interesting that
Yep.
she would still defend him even
Yep.
post-divorce.
Yep.
That's interesting.
Well, that's what I was just going to say is I actually think Drew was probably a pretty good human for the most part. Because even of that level of benefit of the doubt for Michael.
Yeah, or she's hopelessly codependent. But I love your optimism.
Maybe. I mean, they got divorced and then she started all these foundations to help people who are in abusive situations.
But we don't know whose choice it was to divorce.
Yeah, that's true. I'm going to go with her.
Good. We're going to go with an optimistic view for a change.
None of this other stuff is optimistic,
No, it's
so
really not.
it's
Let's make
very
her
dark.
one of the brighter parts of this whole thing.
Yes, it's very dark. So that was Courtney. Okay. And again, grade A badass of a woman.
Yes. Yes, she is.
Like just a boss woman, has her own company, makes her own fortune.
Really brave.
Very brave to go on this and talk about her experience. So then the next woman is Candace Cronkite.
Mm-hmm.
She was not a victim to Armie, but she was someone who loved to dive deep into pop culture and celebrities' lives.
Oh,
So
yeah.
she did all this research on Armie Hammer and his family and found out all this stuff.
Mm.
Okay. I believe she was one who got in touch with Casey Hammer, if
Yeah.
I'm remembering correctly.
Well, and it was unfolding like in real time a little bit. And so her investigation on
Yes.
social media, she was sort of laying it out as she was getting it because she was getting flooded with information.
Flooded. So she came across screenshots of a message from Armie to an ex, and the Instagram that was leaking all this was called House of Effie.
House of Effie. That's
So
right.
House of Effie like blew up.
Oh, yeah. Huge.
And this human at the time was anonymous,
Yes.
but exposing Armie Hammer for everything he was.
And again, receipts, text messages,
Yes.
emails, like real correspondence.
Yes. Yep. So no one knew who the girl was. She ended up, it says it later, she was a woman in the UK who was in a relationship with Armie while he was married.
Mm, of course.
Yep. So she came forward, this woman, Gloria
Yeah.
Allred was her attorney, and she tearfully went through the pain that he caused her.
Mm,
She goes into more explicit details about what happened. So she was the one, Jeannine, this will jog your memory.
mm,
So this all happened in 2017. Okay, so again, before he was divorced.
yeah.
Okay. Oh, I don't know if we can say this on the podcast. He raped her
Mm. Yeah, I
like
think you can.
4 hours.
Mm.
So he abused her for 4 hours. He slammed her head against the wall. During the 4 hours, she tried to get away from him, but he wouldn't let her. She was like crawling on the floor sobbing to get away from him. And he kept pulling her back, like psycho stuff. Psycho stuff. He then wrote her after this experience.
Oh, yes. Okay, I'm remembering now. Okay, tell them.
So he wrote her after this experience saying, well, for not being ready, oh, F right off. You took it like a champ.
I can't. Mm-mm. Mm-mm.
Like it makes my blood boil.
Oh, it's disgusting, is what
I
it
could
is.
cry. It makes
I
me
know.
so
There's
cry.
nothing relational, consensual. There's nothing.
You took it like a champ.
Oh,
I don't know, Jeannine. Like, you know me. It would take everything in me not to hunt him down.
well, and I think then to reconnect that quickly, put it in writing. I mean, he felt bulletproof at this point. That's how much power and control he felt that he had. He felt
Yes.
bulletproof. He was not careful.
Right. Well, then
Thank goodness.
she says back to him that she said, I didn't, and that she tried to crawl away from him crying hysterically. She wrote that back to him.
Yep.
So, no, that was not consensual, you asshat.
Well, and then he wrote back that turned him on.
Yeah.
We're trying to get away from him actually turned him on even more.
Well, and he said raping you because, again, he's thinking he can just say this. And in his brain, it's BDSM.
Yes.
And that was the scene. So I've, you know, the very minimal research I've done in BDSM, that's what they call them, are scenes.
Right.
But for him, he's saying that, you know, it was a scene.
Yeah.
And that she basically played along really well.
Oh my gosh.
I can't even. Like, I cannot.
Mm-mm.
So her video is what launched an investigation.
Yep.
Right? He was represented by Andrew Bretler, who had worked with other celebrities who were accused of sexual misconduct. So I think he worked with Cosby.
Yes, he worked with Cosby. And then Gloria Allred is the one who always kind of represents victims.
Yep. And so they actually work against each other a lot, is what she said.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So there was an article in Playboy that was found where he says that he likes rough sex, pulling hair, even strangulation. They actually in the article say choking, but you know me, like choking is you're choking on food or someone shoving something down your throat. I think
strangulation, and it is not sexy.
It's not sexy. But this is where he said that thing about his wife, but that he would never do that to his wife. He respected her too much. She's the mother of his children.
Wow.
Anyway, y'all my face. Okay. So that was House of Effie. Okay. House of Effie blew him up, got an investigation going. Thank the Lord. It sucks that that's what she went through. And I hate that for her.
Yes.
It makes me sick. Then Julia Morrison, he was DMing this girl. She was very thankful that she never actually met him in person. I'm thankful she never met him in person.
Oh, yeah.
But he reached out to her years before about her art because she does like really interesting, eclectic artwork.
And kind of provocative, like a little bit provocative.
So the one that he reached out to her about was one where it was of a woman or her being strangled in a photo.
Yeah.
A very power and control photo.
Yes.
They were sexting throughout their situationship.
Yeah.
He told her, you know, he would like say things like he wanted to tie her up. He'd call her good little pet and slave. That's what he also called a lot of the women, were like kitty or kitten.
Oh my, can you imagine if some man called me kitten?
I had one guy, Jeannine, call me Sunshine in a group.
Oh no.
They walked in and they said, "Morning, Sunshine." And I said, "Do not." I said, "No, that's not going to fly." You know, my husband doesn't even call me anything like that.
No.
So they were sexting. You'd call her pet names. He said that she will be worshipped, fed, and fucked. So gross. They were engaged in that way, like just sexting and DMing and all the things.
And it's all in the land of hypothetical with the two of them, right? Because they're just talking.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's basically where that ended for her, was that, they just talked and it got spicy at times, and he would
Mm-hmm.
cross boundaries via his words.
Yep.
But then the last one that you had alluded to is Paige Lorenz. She dated him after Courtney, and she was only 22. So Courtney was 30, Paige was 22. Beautiful girl. I almost actually kind of thought they looked a little alike, but
They do look a tiny bit alike.
so he dated her, and she would post pictures of herself, like just a lot of skin pictures,
Yeah.
or she had bruises and bite marks all over her body, posted them.
Mm-hmm.
And Courtney even said, because you saw these pictures, and Courtney said, I know what that is. Those are her badges of honor, that he would tell her to wear
Mm-hmm.
like a badge of honor. And so she did. Paige does talk a little bit in this documentary where this is the one he carved an A into her skin. He wanted to quote unquote brand her, and then without her even saying a word like yes or no, he
Mm-hmm.
just started to carve an A into her skin, and it's still there.
And then lick the blood.
Yes, and then he started licking her blood.
Mm-hmm.
So he would say things like, I want to eat your ribs, I want to smoke your body, stuff like that, like weird stuff. He said that to mostly, I think, Paige, but would like allude to stuff like that with other women.
Yes, I want to cut off a piece of your skin and fry it or something, like some
Yes.
weird
Yeah.
stuff.
Yes. But for some reason, he would say, he actually did this, I think, to Julia too, where
Mm-hmm.
he was fascinated with ribs.
Yes.
He like was fixated on like eating women's ribs. So weird. And then told Julia this was it. He told Julia that he was a cannibal, and then was like, "Oh my God, I can't believe I said that." Like, shut up.
Well, he comes by these allegations.
Yes.
I mean, it's a straight line. It's not like he was a little rough and somebody was like, "Oh my God, he's a cannibal." Like he called himself a cannibal.
He literally said, "I'm a cannibal." And then the next line said, "Oh my gosh, I can't believe I just admitted that out loud." Like he played this weird bait and switch thing where
Yes.
he say something insane and then be like, "Oh my gosh, I can't believe I just said that." Like, stop.
Well, you and I have talked about how some of the sickest people write and write and write and write. They
Yes.
tell on themselves.
Yes.
Armie Hammer has told on himself more than most. And
Yes.
I don't know why he thought, maybe because his dad never
Mhm.
really got exposed in a terrible way. Maybe he thought he could just get away with stuff. But on what planet in the year of our Lord 2020 can you put something like that in writing and not have it come back to haunt you in a really big way? I mean, all of these things came out.
Right. His crazy, if you will, was showcased, thank God.
Yeah, I know.
Because now what I read and heard is that he is selling timeshares.
That just makes sense in a weird way.
Mhm.
I mean, it's worth mentioning just to be fair, fair and balanced, whatever that means. He was not convicted of any of the sexual assault
Right.
allegations or charges. Like they just investigated and dropped the investigation. But I
Correct.
would tell you, as a trauma therapist, listening to these women, every
Oh,
story was credible and the written evidence is there. And so we don't really know all the behind the scenes of how that stuff got squashed, but
so I have a theory
mhm.
as to what you just said, like why he didn't get charged. So I
Okay.
think because he hung his hat on BDSM,
Okay.
that I don't know if there was enough evidence
Mm,
for them. I mean, except here's the thing, House of Effie, like pretty damn straightforward if you ask me.
yeah.
But I don't know if there was enough evidence. And like Courtney said, like she said everything but no, which in yours and my brain, it's like that's still
Right.
reasons to be charged.
Yep. But it's the
But
issue
I
of consent,
yep, yep.
you know?
I think it's because they were like, well, like they were maybe willing to try these things, which they weren't. Their boundaries were pushed little by little
Yep.
and ended up in positions that they did not want to be in.
Absolutely.
So that's my hypothesis as to why he didn't get charged, is because they were like, well, these women were okay with some BDSM stuff,
Absolutely. Which is so sad. I
which just,
mean, it's just so sad.
yeah, it just sucks. So we made it through most of the men in this family. That's not even all of them. That's just some of them,
That's just some
Jeannine.
of them. It's just unbelievable. And so Armie,
Two-parter.
I just read something the other day because I was like, what is happening with him now? And I didn't see the timeshare part, but I did see like he recently just said he's so glad it happened because he got his, I don't know, his like life back, freedom back. I don't know, whatever.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But really,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, I don't know what that
I don't know what I think
means.
about that.
I read that he was selling timeshares in the Cayman Islands.
Which makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, you
All
know
of that.
what,
Cayman
girl?
Islands,
You
all of
like
it makes sense.
all of it.
So we've
Yeah,
talked
and
a
also,
lot about the psychology and some of the intergenerational pieces, but I'm curious, what's your take, Nat, having done the deeper dive on the psychology of Armie Hammer? Like, what are we talking about here?
intergenerational trauma and abuse and power and control.
Okay.
And and genuine desensitization for each generation,
Yes. Yes.
right? So each generation continued to be more and more desensitized to abuse, and
Yeah.
it's because of their exposure to it, right? Like this is
Right.
the way that it goes.
Right.
So they were just continued to be desensitized to it. What's interesting, like I said, what Armie says about his wife, that he wouldn't do any of the BDSM stuff because he respects her too much.
Mm.
There's this part of me that thinks as they went on, this
Yeah.
kind of leads a little into the heart piece, is
Yeah.
that maybe some of them wanted to have a different life and maybe have something healthier, like
Yeah.
Michael marrying Drew, this devout Christian woman, and then Armie having whatever. I mean, who knows? He might have not respected her at all. But
Right.
Armie saying that he respected his wife and would never do those things to her because, he respected her and she was the mother of his kids. So
Right.
there's this part of me that wonders they wanted some way out of this, but just
Mm.
the desensitization, the learned power and control behaviors,
Yeah.
the genuine ice cream scoop taken out of the same part of their brain, I'm sure.
Well, it's he definitely lacks empathy. There's no empathy.
Yeah.
So some people,
None.
they push a boundary with a partner. They might
Mhm.
be defensive at first. They might not want to acknowledge what that meant for the other person, right? I would expect some defensiveness.
Yeah.
There's no empathy. There's actually an episode of the Mindy Project where he
Uh-huh.
slips when they're having sex. Do you know which one I'm talking about?
No.
It's a wild episode, but it's like
Okay.
he ends up doing something that she clearly did not consent to. He says he was just trying something out. She assumes he's way more sexually experienced than her. And so then she feels all inadequate, but also angry. And so it's like, it's a funny episode and it's kind of a take on consent. And they talk about some of those things,
Yeah.
but there's like a genuine feeling between the two people that they want whatever they're doing to be safe, enjoyable, consensual for everyone.
Yeah.
And I think most BDSM experts, even though I have issues with some of that stuff anyway, I think it
Yeah.
lends itself to a lot of unhealthy dynamics.
Hmm.
Anytime you have a dominant and a sub, you gotta think a little bit about power and control. It's just gonna it's inherent in that setup.
Yeah.
But any BDSM expert I think you talk to would say that was not what this was. This was just abuse and total control. And these women were not
Yeah.
enjoying this. They were not equal participants in this. And you can tell every person they interview is visibly shaken by this. These are not
Yes.
overly dramatic women
No.
looking for their 15 minutes, which is what a lot of people kind of said because Armie Hammer did what all good celebrities that are in trouble do. They go to rehab for
Yeah.
what you'll never
Yeah.
know, right?
Yeah.
he goes to rehab, he comes back and he's rehabbing his image. And some of the messages on social media were so awful about these women that they're faking it, they're lying, they're making up, they're hiding behind their social media handles, whatever. And that was
Trying
kind
to
of
deceive
disheartening.
him to like boost their own name.
Well, I find them to be really credible.
Yeah,
As someone who works with
absolutely.
offenders and victims, I find all of their stories to be very credible. And that is just not something people tend to make up stories about, you know,
Mm-hmm.
because
Yeah.
we were humiliated in many ways.
Wow. Yeah. Yeah, honestly, Jeannine, this was such a wild one to do research on because of how deep it went.
So
And here's the thing, I'm sure it went past that. Like every
yeah,
generation learned from the one before.
absolutely.
And so it went beyond that, right? Like I'm sure, we joked a little bit about Victor, his brother, being maybe the good one, but I'm sure there's stuff in his past that he's just not as known as Armie Hammer,
Well, it's
right? Even
literally written into the genes, their
yeah,
experiences in the
exactly.
mama's wombs, what happened, the stress hormones, all of that stuff has an impact on the development of a child. So when you track that all the way back, yeah, I mean, I think Armie Hammer comes by it naturally. That doesn't excuse his behavior, but it makes sense.
Hmm. Well, the entitlement is so loud. It's so loud. There was one part I actually skipped it. I meant to go back to it, but there's this one part, and this is in the documentary where he walks into his hotel room and he scans the hotel, and there's a woman on the bed on all fours in lingerie, and he's like, "Oh, the bed looks comfortable." Scans past
Oh,
that, goes
yeah.
out to the balcony, shows the balcony view, and there's just this woman in full like compliance mode, right? But I
Allegedly.
mean, it's allegedly, right? I have no idea who she was. Maybe she was like, all for it and there
She
was
might as
no
well have
nothing.
been a vase of flowers. She did not move. She did not blink.
Literally. Literally. Like she was just sitting, she was waiting there.
Yep.
So yeah, like you said, no empathy, no awareness
Mm-mm.
to himself, those narcissistic tendencies that we cover quite often,
Mm-hmm.
and entitlement, just total entitlement. I think the heart piece for me in all this is they never had a chance. None of them. None of them
Mm-mm.
had a chance
No, not
of
really.
a normal life, of thinking normally, of having healthy, having a healthy understanding of relationships and sex
Mm.
and women. They just never like, again, Army's a full ass grown adult. He knows what's right and wrong.
Yeah.
However, none of them had a chance. They were born into this.
Yes. I think too about the women involved. What it
Yes, that was the
shows,
next part.
well, yeah, and what it shows me is like the power of having those support groups with survivors. Because when I saw Casey meet Courtney,
Mm-hmm.
oh, I was like, okay, these are two women who have
Mm-hmm.
a really deep knowledge of what it is to be around these specific men, like to have this kind of a model. And you could just sense when they're talking to each other, like there was some healing in that both of them have decided, like, we're not going to keep this a secret. And Courtney runs her business. Courtney went back to her life and seems
Mm-hmm.
strong and is talking about how it is getting easier with time. And I get the sense that she's done some very good work around it. And
Yeah.
Casey as well seems like she's doing
Yeah.
work around it and kind of speaking her truth. But
Well, yeah, and she had her whole own experience with therapy, which that's a different story for a different day. But Casey's been through the ringer with men
mhm.
and a therapist included, and
Mm.
she continues to fight, which
Did
good
her
for her.
therapist try to sleep with her?
No,
Oh,
she talks about her therapist in her book, and he was someone, man, he was a psychologist. Jeannine, some of these therapists, I'm like,
oh, I know. I know.
how are you still in the field?
Listen,
So
we laugh in graduate school,
I
and we
know.
should not have laughed. Every single day, practically, that we attended this one class, professional orientation that gets you ready for going out in the field,
Yeah.
all the ethics.
Yeah.
She would chuckle because they would say, don't sleep with your clients. Like every single day in that class, don't sleep with your clients. And we're all thinking like, what? Nobody's going to sleep with their
Why
clients.
would you sleep with your client?
People freaking sleep with their clients. And I've
I
finally
know.
gotten in far enough in the field to have run into people who have done this.
I know. It's
And it's
so wild.
unbelievable.
It's so wild. I'm thankful that I'm not like necessarily friends with them.
Oh, no, not a friend.
But
I'm starting to hear stories where it's like people that I have known or
yeah, have
went to
met.
the same school or
Yeah.
whatever. I'm like,
Yeah.
goodness.
Yeah. So no, he didn't sleep with her, but he was seeing her and then started seeing her husband as well, which is like conflict of interest, obviously.
Oh my God.
And
Yes.
like she's and here's the thing, like this happens, right? Where she's actually started to develop feelings for her psychologist because
Yeah.
he was a safe man for her. So she
Oh,
started
people fall in love
developing
with their therapist
feelings.
all the time. That's the thing that happens.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. So she started developing feelings, but what happened was he was seeing both of them. And then her husband at the time when she was in therapy with this other guy said he wanted to leave her. And so the therapist knew when the husband was going to leave Casey
Oh,
and he was still seeing both of them. And so like that was such a breach of trust for her.
we need to do a
Obvious.
mini on like inappropriate setups in counseling because
Yes.
so many counselors try to be everything to everyone, and that's
Yeah.
dangerous. Something like this can
Yeah.
happen.
Yeah. Yeah. Just really, yeah, really unfortunate for Casey, but she continues to fight. And I
Mm-hmm.
think that was what I was going to say. So the couple of big heart pieces for me was one, the men really didn't stand a chance in this family. Like you were kind of, I mean, it's like your birthright to be just like an abuser. And the other heart piece is that these women, each of them that at least were on this documentary, I'm sure there's so many others,
Yeah.
could come out of this from what it seemed like. And, they were brave to share their story. They're strong women.
Oh, yeah.
And,
So brave.
I'm hoping that they are being treated the way that they deserve by everyone in their life now. Now that they're not in a relationship with someone like Armie or Armie Hammer,
Oh,
and
yeah.
actually in a relationship with him, that they are just living a better life.
Yes. Yes. Well, I think this was the perfect family to pick for talking about intergenerational violence and how these patterns go.
Right?
And with our
Yes.
clients, when Natalie and I work with clients, first of all, most therapists want to know the history of the client sitting in front of them. Natalie and I
Mhm.
actually do, like you mentioned, genograms. We do genograms with our clients. We talk a lot about these patterns. We talk a lot about how things tend to repeat unless we intentionally make different choices. And the hopeful part for me in the intergenerational stuff is when you break a cycle, you're immediately doing something better and different. And you can actually reverse these things. This is something that you can actually have agency over if you get help
Mhm.
and intervene in the right ways.
Mhm. Exactly. Exactly.
So thanks for hanging in there with us on a really, really long, dense episode with lots of details. We will see you next time.
We love you, our forensic friends.
Bye. I'm Jeannine.
And I'm Nat.
And as always, thanks for listening and join us next week for more crime, psychology, and heart.